Hello, my dear lovely students. So, welcome on this amazing platform of Physics Wallah, where I, Ayushi Agarwal, your botany expert, is going to teach you the first chapter of class 11th, that is Living World. Now, before starting with this chapter, let me tell you the importance of this chapter. See, whenever you start a new chapter, you should know that how much is this chapter important from the point of view of NEET. Yes or no? So if I talk about this chapter and the importance of this chapter, then my dear students, in past 10 years, it has been observed that whichsoever questions are asked from this chapter are basically from NCERT itself. Line-wise questions are asked from this chapter from NCERT. That means NCERT becomes very important now. Correct? So, in my session today, I am going to cover not only whole NCERT, but also I am going to give you some extra information that is also going to help you to solve any question if it comes more than NCERT. Like this, your whole living world will be absolutely prepared and will come on your tips. So what are you waiting for? Let's directly start with this chapter, Living World, without wasting further time. Right? Okay. So, if I talk about Living World, first, you should know what are we going to do in this chapter, what this chapter is all about. The name of the chapter itself tells you, Living World. That means in this chapter, we are going to talk about all those organisms which is having life. Yes or no? How you decode living? Living are those organisms which have life. And this chapter is all about living organisms. First, we are going to distinguish between living and non-living in the first half of the chapter, and in the remaining half of the chapter, we are going to study specifically about living organisms. I hope I am clear with this. Now let's start with the main chapter. As I started my chapter by saying that living means any organism which is having life. Yes or no? So that means you should now tell me that what is life. If suppose any person asks you that define life, then normally a layman who is not a student of biology, how is that fellow going to define life? Any person will say that object which is able to move, which is able to sit, stand, dance, etc. is living, is having life. Yes or no? But now, since we are the students of biology, we are going to define life in more technical manner. Technically, bachcho, life is a complex organization of molecules which forms cell. You know, cell is the basic structural and functional unit of life. So, different molecules, they join together to form cells, which in turn club with other cells to perform functions like reproduction, growth, consciousness, metabolism, etc. and so on and so on. So, what is life? Simply, life is a complex organization of molecules to form cells, which in turn joins together to perform some specific functions like reproduction, growth, and so on. Correct? Now, in order to distinguish between living and non-living objects, see, there are two objects on this earth, some living, some non-living. Now, how will you differentiate that this is living, this is non-living? There should be some features with the help of which you can distinguish them. Now we are going to see all those features one by one which are going to differentiate living from non-living. First of all, we are going to characterize all those features in two categories. The two types of features are defining features and characteristic features, right? So, in order to distinguish between living and non-living, there are two types of features, that is defining features and characteristic features. What are defining, what are characteristic features? No need to worry when ma'am is here. Okay, so first if I talk about defining features, then defining features are those set of features which are exclusively, underline the term exclusively. Exclusively means only and only. So, defining features are those group of features which are exclusively exhibited by all living organisms without any exception. That means if I talk about a specific defining feature, then that property should be present in all living organisms without any exception. Like for example, I talk about consciousness. There is one property called consciousness. Right? Consciousness means ability to respond to external environmental conditions. This is called consciousness. Consciousness, bachcho, it is exhibited by all living organisms, be it unicellular, multicellular, prokaryotic, eukaryotic, so on. Any living organism which is made up of cell, which is considered as living, will show consciousness. Therefore, consciousness becomes a defining feature. Correct? On contrary, on the other hand, the another type of features are characteristic features. Now, what are characteristic features? Characteristic features, mere bachcho, these are those features which are either exhibited by both living and non-living, right? Features which are either exhibited by both living and non-living, or only living organisms but with few exceptions. Like for example, if I talk about reproduction. Now, what is reproduction? Reproduction is simply the process by which an organism gives birth to its young ones of their own kind. एक biological phenomena है by which an organism gives birth to new young ones. Yes or no? Now, it is only exhibited by living organism, correct? No table, no chair, no fan, no lights is going to produce new fans and ACs and lights and tube lights. No, non-living objects does not reproduce, absolutely correct. But do you agree with this that all living organisms can reproduce? No. Why? Because there are some group of organisms, they are living but they cannot reproduce. For example, mules. For example, worker bees. For example, some couples, sterile couples who are not able to produce their own young ones. They are living but they cannot reproduce. Hence, reproduction becomes a characteristic feature. Clear? So how many sets of features are there which will help you to distinguish between living and non-living? Two, defining and characteristic. Defining are those which are purely exhibited by all living organisms without any exception, and characteristic are those which are only exhibited by living organisms with few exceptions, or exhibited by both living and non-living. I hope this is clear. Now I am having some list of features which I am going to discuss one by one in detail, right? That whether are they defining, whether are they characteristic, and why. So first we are going to discuss all those features one by one, and then we are going to make a list out of all those features that whether they are defining or characteristic. Clear everyone? Yes, absolutely good. So first feature which we are going to discuss now is growth. Growth. Is it new term? No. Since very beginning, since 6th, 7th, 8th, we are hearing about this terminology growth. So will you define this growth for me? Yes, very good. So what is growth? Growth is simply increase in the body mass, volume, number of cells, etc. Yes or no? What is growth? Is an increase in the size, mass, volume or number of cells in the body. Simply increase is growth. Right? Now this growth can be of two types. Whether it can be a reversible growth, that means which can be reversed back, or it can be irreversible. That means which cannot be reversed back. Correct? If growth is reversible, right, then that type of growth is known as extrinsic growth, also known as external growth. And if growth is irreversible type, then that type of growth is known as intrinsic growth or internal growth. So one by one I'm going to tell you about extrinsic and intrinsic growth. Extrinsic is basically the external growth which is of reversible in nature. Like for example, a snow-covered mountain. Snow-covered mountain. See, suppose this is the base of the mountain, right? This is the height, this is natural mountain. Now, if Tenzing Norgay or anybody who likes to climb mountain, go to climb mountain in summers, then the height of the mountain may be 5,000 feet above the sea level. But if the same fellow goes and try to climb this mountain in the winters, then what will happen? In winters on the mountains there is heavy snowfall, and that snow is going to get deposited on the mountain. The snow is going to get deposited on the mountain. As a result, temporarily the height of the mountain will get increased maybe by X feet. Yes or no? So now that climber will need to climb 5,000 plus X feet to reach the top of the mountain. Again summers is going to come. Now snow is going to melt down. Again the height of the mountain will become 5,000 feet. So what is this type of growth? This is external reversible growth. External, why? Because externally on the mountain, snow is just getting deposited and it is temporary. Summers will come, snow is going to melt. Winters is going to come, again snowfall, again the height is going to increase. So this type of temporary growth, which is external and reversible in nature, is called as extrinsic growth. And it is exhibited by non-living objects. Clear to everybody? Very good. So it is exhibited by whom? It is exhibited by basically non-living objects. Now, on the other hand, if I talk about what? If I talk about, yes, intrinsic growth. Intrinsic is actually बच्चों internal growth. Internal growth is actually which is observed in your body. All living organisms without any exception shows intrinsic or internal growth. That means the change which is not visible, right? When fertilization of sperm with egg took place, zygote was formed, right? But when the baby comes out of the body, is it still in zygote state? No, that single cell has actually multiplied itself, has undergone repeated divisions to make a full-fledged multi-celled organism. Right? Now, once that baby comes out, can you reverse that baby back to zygote stage? No. First thing. Second thing, will that baby remain as baby? No. Every day that baby is going to grow. How? By depositing new cells inside the body, right? And externally you will just be able to see the increase in the volume of that body, but will you be able to count the number of cells which are increasing inside it? No. Therefore, intrinsic growth is first of all irreversible. Second, it is internal. Third, it cannot be visualized. Unlike that of extrinsic, you could see the snow deposition on the mountain, right? So extrinsic growth is also visible, but intrinsic growth is not visible directly. You can observe the change because of intrinsic growth, correct? But you cannot visualize it directly. Second, it is internal. Third, it is irreversible. Fourth, it is exhibited by all living organisms without any exception. Am I clear? So how many types of growth are there? There are two types of growth. External growth or extrinsic growth, internal growth or intrinsic growth. External growth is exhibited by non-living, whereas intrinsic is exhibited by living. External growth is reversible in nature, externally visible, whereas intrinsic growth is irreversible in nature, not directly visible and internal. Clear? Now, intrinsic growth beta, it is exclusively exhibited by all living organisms, be it plants, be it animals, unicellular, multicellular, prokaryote, eukaryote, any type of organism exhibiting growth, living organism exhibiting growth will be its internal intrinsic growth. Am I clear? So we can say that intrinsic growth is exclusively exhibited by living organism. Therefore, this intrinsic growth is a defining feature. But if I talk about growth, तो growth कैसा हो जाएगा? Growth will become a characteristic feature as it is exhibited by both living and non-living. Subheading within growth is intrinsic growth, and intrinsic growth is a defining feature. Clear? If the question is asked that what is growth, which type of feature, CF or DF, your answer will be CF. Why? Because it is exhibited by both living and non-living, extrinsic, intrinsic. But if the question comes that what is intrinsic growth, then in that case your answer is going to be defining feature, because intrinsic growth is exhibited by all living organisms without any exception. I hope I am clear with this. Very good. Let's continue. Now, intrinsic growth, as I told you, it is exhibited by both the groups, plants as well as animals. If specifically, bachcho, if I talk about plants, then plants, they show open type of growth. Their intrinsic growth is open type. Now, what is open type? And in animals, this intrinsic type of growth is closed type. Now, bhai, what is open, what is closed? Let's discuss. If specifically I talk about open type of growth, wait, this pen is not going to be visible. Yes, if I am going to talk about open type of growth, beta, open means the growth which can occur throughout the lifespan. Till the time you are alive, body is growing, right? So open is also known as indeterminate or indefinite growth. Why? Because open type of growth occurs throughout the lifespan. Clear? And this type of growth is exhibited by some plants which are having lateral meristematic tissue, because lateral meristematic tissue results in secondary growth, and secondary growth is actually open type. So in plants they show open type of growth due to the presence of lateral meristematic tissue. About lateral meristem we will discuss in anatomy chapter, but here you should know that there are two types of intrinsic growth, open and closed. Open type of growth is exhibited by few plants which have lateral meristematic tissue in them. This type of growth occurs throughout the lifespan. You must have observed, have you seen a mango tree? In mango tree, the thickness of its stem and roots, it keeps on increasing every year. Suppose in 10 years, the stem of the mango tree was this much. After 20 years, if you go and observe, the thickness is not going to remain the same. Rather, it is going to increase. After 30 years, it is not going to remain the same. It is again going to increase. So why? Because that mango tree in its stem and its root, it is having lateral meristem. And that lateral meristem is responsible for adding new tissues every year. Thus, mango tree shows open type of growth. Jab tak, till the time that mango tree is alive, its thickness, its stem and root thickness is going to increase. Clear? So this is open type of growth. On the other hand, if I talk about animals, bachcho shows closed type of growth. Why? Because there is no such meristematic tissue called lateral meristem in animals, be it humans or be it any other organism. Why? That is why our height, and if you see the average size of any animal or any human being, it is fixed. We do not grow throughout our lifespan because we show closed type of growth. Closed is also known as determinate, right, or definite. What is closed type of growth? Growth which occurs for fixed duration. Clear? Yes. Very good. I hope this whole growth is clear to my every student. What is growth? Growth is a characteristic feature. It is increase in the size, mass, volume or number of cells. It can be of two types: reversible, irreversible, extrinsic and intrinsic. Extrinsic by non-living, intrinsic by all living organisms without any exception. Thus, growth becomes a defining, intrinsic growth becomes a defining feature. Clear? It can be exhibited by all plants and animals. Few plants shows open type of growth, and animals without any exception they show closed type of growth. This much you have to do for the first feature which I have told you, that is growth. I hope I am clear with this. Continuing with the chapter, second feature which now we are going to study is reproduction. Right? What is reproduction? I have already told you. Let's quickly revise that. Reproduction is actually, bachcho, it is a biological phenomena by which an organism give birth to new young ones of their own kind. Dog give birth to dog, cat give birth to cat, human give birth to humans. So it's a biological phenomena by which an organism give birth to new young ones of their own kind. Clear? It is a characteristic feature. You already know. Yes or no? Why it is a characteristic feature? Because it is exhibited by living organisms but with few exceptions. So let me write the reason. till the time you revise in your own mind. Okay, so it's a characteristic feature because it is exhibited by living organisms but with few exceptions. And what are those exceptions? Have I told you? Yes, ma'am, you have told us. And those exceptions are like sterile couples, the couple who are not able to reproduce, worker bee, mules, etc. Right? So because of this reason, reproduction becomes a characteristic feature. Okay. Now, there is one line I have written on the screen. I hope you all can read it. And what is that line? Growth and reproduction are mutually inclusive phenomena in single-celled organism, whereas these two are exclusive phenomena in multi-celled organism. What this line means? Suppose if I'm talking about a bacteria. This is a single-celled organism, bacteria, for example, right? Now, this unicellular organism, what is growth for this? If I talk about this bacteria, then what is growth for this bacteria? If it divides and if its number increases, how a bacteria is going to grow? Initially, it is going to grow in size. Once the size is going to increase, it will undergo division, it is going to divide by fission, and it's going to increase the number. So, in fact, growth is directly proportional to increase in the number of cells, right? So, this bacteria is going to show growth by showing increase in the number of cells. Clear? Now, what is reproduction? How this bacteria is going to reproduce? We say that bacteria, they reproduce asexually by fission method. What happens in fission? The parent bacteria simply divides to produce two new daughter bacteria. So, we can also say that for this bacteria, what is reproduction? It is also in terms of increase in number of cells. Yes or no? If this bacteria performs fission, then it is going to increase its number cells. It is going to increase its number of cells. Number of cell increase ho raha hai, that means growth is taking place, as well as fission is a method of asexual reproduction. That means this single-celled organism, it is performing both growth and reproduction hand in hand. This bacteria is reproducing by increasing its number of cell, which is also known as growth. Therefore, we can say that in single-celled organism, both growth and reproduction are one and the same process. They are inclusive. They are one and same. This bacteria, if you say it is showing growth, correct. If you say it is showing reproduction, again correct. So it is mutually inclusive phenomena, right? Now on the other hand, if I talk about a multi-celled organism like me, will you say that in my body growth and reproduction are one phenomena? No. Till this time, till this age, I am only showing growth. My body has increased, my number of cells has increased, my volume, my size has increased. But have I reproduced? No. Am I having kids? No. So that means in multi-celled organism, growth and reproduction, they are two different phenomena. Okay? They are two exclusive phenomena. But in case of single-celled organism, they are one phenomena. Inclusive, exclusive. Multi-celled, unicelled. Clear? Yes. So thumbs up for this. Very good. I hope till this here the concept is clear to everybody. Now reproduction beta can be of two types. Since kids, we are learning this asexual reproduction and sexual reproduction. So here also I'm going to give you some important points related to types of reproduction. There can be two types of reproduction, asexual and sexual. If I talk about asexual reproduction, then asexual reproduction is that type of reproduction where parents are producing offsprings that are identical to them, both morphologically as well as genetically. First point, right? And very important point. So what is asexual reproduction? It is the phenomena by which parents are producing new young ones that are identical, both दिखने में भी morphologically as well as genetically in terms of genes as well. So both morphologically as well as genetically. Clear? On the other hand, if I talk about sexual reproduction, then sexual reproduction means the parents, when they are reproducing, they are producing new ones which are similar to them but not identical. Correct? Then let me write them. Just simply one term I am going to write on the screen. Sexual means offsprings are similar to parent but not identical. You are not going to say that I am the identical copy of my mother or father. No. Your eyes may be similar to your mother. Your nose may be similar to your father. Some features may match with your parents, but you cannot say that you are the mirror image of your parents. No, na? We are not clones. Correct. And in the second difference of between asexual and sexual can be that in asexual reproduction, zygote formation does not take place. Gamete may or may not be formed. However, zygote will never be produced. Whereas in case of sexual reproduction, both gamete formation and fusion to form zygote is an important event. Correct? So what is asexual and sexual? Asexual reproduction is that type of process by which parents produce identical offsprings, clones of themselves, without forming zygote. Whereas if I talk about sexual reproduction, then in sexual reproduction, offsprings are similar to parent but not identical, as both gamete formation and its fusion takes place. Clear? Now, sexual reproduction you are going to study more in detail, but if I talk about asexual, then there can be different types of asexual reproduction. Right? For example, fission. You see in case of bacteria, the bacteria, or if I talk about amoeba, if I talk about euglena, then what they do, they divide their body into two equal halves. So that is called as fission. Apart from fission, budding is also one of the type of asexual reproduction which you see in case of single-celled fungi, yeast. What is budding? Budding means protuberance. Suppose this is a yeast. Yeast is a single-celled fungi, Ascomycetes, right? It's a eukaryotic organism, so it is having a well-defined genetic material and cytoplasm. Now, if it wants to perform budding, then what it is going to do? Slightly on the surface, a protuberance is going to appear. You know protuberance? An outward growth, right? So protuberance is going to appear on the parent body. Some amount of cytoplasm along with the genetic material is going to move into this protuberance. This protuberance is going to grow in size. It will grow in size, and a time will come, it is going to detach from the parent body and will establish itself as a daughter cell. So this type of asexual reproduction is known as budding, where parent is only one parent is involved, no zygote formation, and this daughter is going to be exact clone of the parent. Clear? So the two methods which I have told you so far for asexual reproduction is fission and budding. Clear? Very good. Apart from these two, fragmentation is also one of the method. Let me just remove this so that space can be created. Fragmentation. Fragmentation is also one of the method of asexual reproduction which you observe in case of mosses. Mosses are the highermost bryophytes. Okay? In mosses you observe this type of reproduction. Apart from mosses, lower organisms like fungi also reproduce by the method of fragmentation. Apart from fragmentation, sporulation. Different types of spores are produced. Okay? In fungi you have studied so many spores like zoospores and sporangiospores, etc. So this is one of the method of asexual reproduction, sporulation, which you observe in case of lower organisms like fungi. Apart from sporulation, one more method of asexual reproduction is there called regeneration. Regeneration, which you observe in case of one of the platyhelminthes, that is planaria. Planaria shows true regeneration, and this is one of the method of asexual reproduction. Bachcho, this question has been asked frequently in NEET. What is that question? The question is, which organisms shows true regeneration? And option always which come as an answer is planaria. So दिमाग में बैठा लो, just feed this in your brain that planaria shows true regeneration. Regeneration is a method of asexual reproduction. Clear to everyone? What is reproduction? Yes, it is a characteristic feature. Why? Yes, because it shows exception. Then types of reproduction, asexual and sexual. Clear. Fourth, we did that growth and reproduction is inclusive and exclusive feature. So 4 important things we have discussed under the heading of reproduction. I hope it is clear to each and every kid of mine. Right? Very good, very good. Now let's move ahead. You have done growth, you have done reproduction. Third important feature now which we are going to discuss is consciousness. I already told you, I already introduced this terminology also. Yes or no? Okay, so what is consciousness? Consciousness is the ability to sense the change in environmental conditions. Whatever change is taking place in your nearby surrounding, you are able to sense it and you are able to respond to it. For example, there is a hot vessel. You don't know, mummy has not told you that it is a hot vessel. You go and touch it by chance. What is your immediate reaction? Will you keep on touching it? No. You're going to take away your hand directly from that vessel. This is your consciousness behavior. You are showing response to that vessel. Suppose it is raining outside. Will you go without a raincoat or without an umbrella? No. You know it is raining. If you go like that, you will get wet. So you take your umbrella or you wear your raincoat. This is your consciousness behavior. Plants, they show response to light. Light, right? photoperiodism, concept of flowering, photosynthesis, all these phenomena is shown by plants in response to light, in response to temperature. So what is light? What is temperature? These are external conditions and plants are showing response to them. Right? Amoeba, any unicellular, multicellular, prokaryotic, eukaryotic, any organism, all living organisms without any exception shows consciousness. Consciousness is the ability to sense the change in environmental conditions and then respond it accordingly. Clear? Okay, very good. So now see, what is consciousness? Ability to sense the change in environmental conditions. That change in environmental condition, beta, this change in environmental condition is known as stimuli. Change in environmental condition is known as stimuli. Stimuli can be either physical, like for example, light, temperature, which your plant shows response, which you show response. Chemical also, stimulus can be chemical, like for example in bryophytes, in case of pteridophytes, the anthrozoids, that is a male gamete, they move towards the female gamete in response to the chemicals. Pollen tube, it grows towards the ovule in response to chemicals secreted by the synergid. They are called as chemoattractants. So that pollen tube is showing what? It is showing consciousness behavior. It is showing response to that chemical stimuli. Clear? Biological. Mimosa pudica, touch me not. You go and touch that plant. Leaves are going to droop. Somebody touch you. If I come and slap you or if I come and hug you, what is going to take place? You're going to suddenly respond to it. If I slap you, you're going to stay away from me. If I'm going to hug you, you'll come near to me. So this is your consciousness behavior which you are showing response towards biological stimuli. Clear? So what is consciousness? Why it is a defining feature? What is stimuli? I hope all these points are now extremely clear to all my students. Very good. Coming forward. Now beta, there is some point which is given in NCERT and equally very, very important from the NEET point of view that I am going to discuss now. See, plants as well as animals, why only mentions plants, as well as animals who are seasonal breeders, they show response to light, they show response to change in temperature condition for their reproductive ability. Correct? You must have heard the term of photoperiodism. Plants, they exhibit photoperiodism. That is flowering. Photoperiodism is responsible for flowering. It is a flowering pattern. Shows photoperiodism. Photo means light. Periodism means duration of exposure. So beta, plants for flowering, for reproduction requires specific duration of temperature exposure, specific duration of light exposure. So this is the capacity of the plant to show consciousness behavior towards light. Clear? Similarly, not all animals but few animals who are seasonal breeders, their reproductive capacity is also dependent upon change in temperature conditions. You must have observed in dogs and cats, they cannot reproduce throughout the year like human beings. They need only specific time. Like for example, dogs usually reproduce during winters because their estrous cycle needs low temperature. So they usually reproduce during winters. Correct? They are called as seasonal breeders. So they are showing consciousness behavior. They are showing response to temperature, which is a physical stimuli. Am I clear with this point? So plant shows photoperiodism, which is one of the flowering pattern, and this photoperiodism is their consciousness behavior. Same seasonal breeders. Correct? Okay, very good. Now within this consciousness, there is one very important term called self-consciousness. Now, consciousness, so no doubt, it is a defining feature of all living organisms. Then, what is self-consciousness? Self-consciousness simply means ability to sense what is good and what is bad. अच्छा क्या है, बुरा क्या है. And this capacity, this self-consciousness behavior is only exhibited by humans. Living organism के अंदर एक category आती है of humans, and only humans are known to show self-consciousness. That is why human beings are the most powerful organism on this earth. No lions, no tigers are powerful. We human beings are most powerful because God has given us some extra benefit of self-consciousness. And self-consciousness means ability to sense between good and bad. You know that if you study well, you're going to score good marks. You know if you don't study, then you're not going to get good marks, you are not going to pass, and then so on. So you have this thinking, you have your inner soul. You have one inner voice. Whenever you start doing something wrong, there is one inner soul who is going to tell you stop. If you're doing something good, then your inner soul is going to tell you keep doing. So this inner soul, this self-consciousness behavior, this ability to sense between good and bad is only bestowed by God to human beings. सिर्फ हमारे पास ये power है. And that is why we are the most powerful organism on this earth. Thus, if the question comes that what is self-consciousness, whether it is a defining feature or characteristic feature, then what will be your answer? Self-consciousness is, first of all, exclusively exhibited by living organisms. Sorry, by human beings, not living organisms, by human beings. Therefore, it becomes an intrinsic feature of humans. It becomes intrinsic feature of humans. Right? Okay. I hope all the points which I have written on this page is clear to each and every student. Well done. There is one note point I have written at the base. Can you all see this? A person who is in coma is, whether that fellow considered is coming under consciousness? If yes, then ma'am, consciousness में तो exception आ गया, because a person who is in coma does not show any response. You touch, you do whatever with that person is not going to show response. So exception आ गया. Then consciousness should be a characteristic feature in that case. No. Why? Because a person who is in coma is under some medical guidance, is technically considered as brain dead. Ethically, a person who is in coma is not dead. But technically, if I talk about whose brain is not functioning, whose brain is not coordinating with the other organs of the body, technically that fellow will be considered as dead. Which dead? Brain dead. And if a brain is not functioning, surely you cannot come under consciousness. So due to a person who is in coma, consciousness does not become a characteristic feature. It is a problem of so many students. I have been teaching since so long, and so many of my students, whenever I am taking this topic, every student raises hands in the classes and they ask that, ma'am, why consciousness is not a characteristic feature? Because a person who is in coma is not responding, and we consider that fellow as living. Then it should become a characteristic feature. Then to all those Students, please listen to this. A person who is in coma is technically brain dead, is under some medical guidance. Such a person does not follow the rules of consciousness, because when your brain is not functioning, how will your body coordinate with it? Clear? And if body is not coordinated with the brain, how will you show consciousness? Therefore, a person who is in coma is brain dead and is not coming under consciousness. Consciousness remains as exclusive phenomena of living organisms. It remains as defining phenomena of all living organisms. Clear? I hope all the points we have covered in consciousness as well. Now let's move ahead and talk about the next set of feature called as metabolism. Okay, now coming to metabolism. This is the next important feature which we are going to discuss now. What is metabolism? First the question comes in the mind is, what is metabolism? So bachcho, my dear students, metabolism is actually defined as sum total of all the chemical reactions which are taking place inside a body. Right? Sum total. I'm not talking about only one reaction. Parallel number of reactions which are going inside back in your body in order to sustain, in order to make a complete system in your body. So those set of reactions is called as metabolism. Like for example, in the morning you eat something. If you eat aloo ka paratha in the morning, that aloo ka paratha you take in, it goes inside your stomach and then multiple reactions start in your body. Right? It's not a single step process, but it's a multiple step process. So many steps are going to take place inside your body in order to break down that aloo ka paratha and to produce energy. And then waste products, whatever is generated, is again thrown out of the body through next set of reactions. Yes or no? So all these reactions which are taking place simultaneously, one after the other, regulated by some enzymes or so on, together is called as metabolism. Clear? Metabolism, beta, it is a defining property. Because this defining, why it is defining? Because metabolism is exhibited by all living organisms without any exception. No living organism, again I'm saying single-celled, multi-celled, any kind of living organisms without any exception are going to show metabolism. Clear? So metabolism is also a defining feature. Right? Now these sum total reactions can be either catabolic, can be either anabolic. That means metabolism can be either catabolism or can be either anabolism. Catabolism means sum total of reactions which are taking place in order to convert some complex substance into simpler form. Like I gave you an example of aloo ka paratha, it's a complex sugar, right? Then that complex sugar is broken down into simplest form and again it is broken down to produce energy. So those sets of reactions that are taking place in order to convert complex substance into simplest is known as catabolism. So where I have written catabolic, yes. Catabolic means breakdown. Contrary to catabolism is anabolism. Anabolism means sum total of reactions which are responsible for forming a complex substance from simpler forms. Like you see in case of photosynthesis. In photosynthesis, CO2, water, two simplest form, they are joined together to form glucose. Right? So these are, and it is not a single step process. You know, there are so many steps involved in order to produce glucose from CO2 and water. Correct? So this is anabolism. sum total of reactions which are responsible for producing a complex substance from simpler ones. Clear to everybody? Okay. Now, there are two types of reactions. But in metabolism also there are two types of reactions. Reactions can be of two types. In vitro reactions, also called as test tube reactions. And second are in vivo reactions. What is in vitro? What is in vivo? In vitro are those reactions, मेरे बच्चों, which are taking place outside the cell. ठीक है? So in vitro reactions are those that are taking place outside a living body. So where will it take place? It will take place in a test tube. Remember, that is why in vitro reactions are also known as test tube reactions. In vivo reactions are those which takes place within the cell. So reactions which take place within the cell are known as in vivo reactions. So how many types of reactions are there? Two types. In vitro, in vivo. Right? In vitro क्या होता है बच्चों? In vitro are those reactions which are taking place inside us, outside a cell in a test tube. Whereas in vivo are those which are taking place inside a living cell. Clear? Up. I hope in vitro, in vivo is clear in your mind. बच्चों, the reactions which are taking place in a test tube are usually single step reaction. Like for example, formation of zygote, sperm and egg are collected from the donor in a test tube. They are made to join with the help of some stabilizers and enzymes to form zygote. Now, as soon as that zygote is produced, it is then taken off from the test tube and implanted in the mother's womb. So that further reaction, further development takes place in vivo, inside the body. Right? So in test tube usually single step reaction take place. Whereas in vivo it's sum total of reactions. अभी जो भी मेरी body में reactions हो रही हैं, I am talking, I am wasting my energy, I am maybe eating, maybe walking. So all those whatever reactions are taking place inside my body are in vivo and they are multiple stepped. One after the other they are taking place automatically. But in test tube usually one reaction take place at a time. Right? As a result, can you say that reaction taking place in a test tube are metabolism? Will they be a part of metabolism? Yes or no? What will be your answer to this? No. Why? Because metabolism is sum total. When number of reactions take place one after the other, correct? Regulated by different enzymes and all, then those sum total reactions are called as metabolism. Am I clear? So all the in vivo reactions are metabolism, but in vitro reactions are not metabolism. That means test tube reaction, if they are not metabolism, if they are not the part of metabolism, then can we say they are living body? Test tube में जो reaction हो रही है, will it be called as a living body? No, test tube reaction is not living organism. Then can you call it as non-living body? Again no. Why? Because at least one reaction is taking place now. If not sum total, then at least one is taking place. And if even one is taking place, then that reaction, that test tube cannot be considered as non-living. It can neither be considered as living organism nor that reaction within the test tube can be considered as non-living. Why? Because at least one reaction is taking place. May not be sum total, may not be multiple at a time, but at least one is taking place. So such in vitro reactions which are taking place in a test tube are neither living nor non-living. Therefore, such reactions are known as only living reactions. लिविंग ऑर्गेनिज्म भी नहीं कहेंगे, नॉन लिविंग ऑर्गेनिज्म भी नहीं कहेंगे. वी आर सिंपली गोइंग टू यूज अ मिड टर्म. एंड व्हाट इज दैट मिड टर्म? दैट मिड टर्म इज लिविंग रिएक्शंस. क्लियर? Why are we not calling test tube reactions as living organism? Because they are not showing metabolism. Why are we not calling them as non-living organism? Because at least one is taking place. So there's a mid-term, that is living reactions. In vitro reactions are neither living nor non-living. They are simply living reactions. I hope till here all the features is clear to each and every student. So we have discussed so far growth, reproduction, metabolism, consciousness. Apart from this, you have more features like cellular organization and locomotion. Cellular organization means body which is made up of cells. We also show organ system type of body organization, but this organ system has actually came from cell. So all living organisms, bachcho, without any exception, we show cellular organization. You know that, just a second, yes, you know that one thing, all living organisms follow cell theory without any exception. Cell is the basic structural and functional unit of life. So living organisms exclusively, they exhibit cellular organization. Last feature is locomotion. Beta, plants, do they show locomotion? They are sedentary, but they are living. Therefore, locomotion becomes a characteristic feature. Clear? So, whatsoever features you have studied, now we are going to list them over here, and you are going to help me that whether they are defining or they are characteristic. Right? Will you do this to me? Will you help me? Yes, very good. So, number one feature which we did is growth. What is growth? Oh, sorry. What is growth? Growth is a characteristic feature. ठीक? Growth में एक सब heading थी, intrinsic growth. So what will you say for intrinsic growth? Yes, revise everybody please. Revision is equivalently important. ठीक है? So start revising, start recalling all the things which I have told you. Intrinsic feature is a defining feature. Correct? Now, next. This is second. Third, reproduction. What is reproduction? Reproduction again becomes a characteristic feature. You know the reason. I'm not going to repeat it. Okay? Please revise it. Fourth, consciousness. Again, it is a defining feature. All living organisms, without any exception, defining. Next, cellular organization. It is a defining feature. Next, locomotion. It is a characteristic feature. Why? Because plants, they are sedentary, they do not move, but they are living. Therefore, it becomes a characteristic feature. Hope self-conscious, you know, self-consciousness is one more feature which we did, but it is a defining feature of only humans. Remember that point. I hope we have covered each and everything. Is anything left? Yeah, metabolism is left. Yes, metabolism. So what is metabolism? It is also a defining property. Clear to each and every student? All the features? Okay, very good. And now we are going to continue with the next part of the chapter, that is diversity in the world. Biodiversity. I hope till here the difference between living, non-living, defining, non-defining is clear. Okay, ji. So let's start with diversity. Okay, so we were discussing about all the features which helped you to distinguish between living and non-living, right? So right now you have seen the first half of the chapter where you have studied that how to differentiate between living and non-living. Now bachcho, we are heading towards the second section of the chapter where you are going to simply focus on the diversity of living organism. Now when I use the term diversity, what do you mean by this terminology diversity? Diversity means different. Like for example, we say that India is a land of diversity. Why we use this term? Because in India, so many different types of people are living, so many different religions are there, etc. That is why we use the term diversity. Here in this chapter, we are going to term diversity in terms of living organisms, in terms of their number, that how many different types of individual species are found on this earth. So this is known as biodiversity. What is biodiversity? Once again, biodiversity bachcho refers to the number and types of organism present on earth. Clear? It has been recorded according to your NCERT. There is some specific value given which is very, very important to remember. Usually NEET ask this question. So this value is very important. You all should remember that biodiversity recorded so far is approximately 1.7 to 1.8 million. This 1.7 to 1.8 million can also be written as 17 to 18 lakh. So many living species have been recorded so far. Now, do you think that only this much living species are there on earth? So your answer should be no. This number is actually of those species which have been observed, which has been studied and which are known to the people, known to the scientists. But yet there are so many species to be discovered. So many species, so many different types of organisms are there, bachcho, which are yet to be discovered. Now, for example, a scientist, a taxonomist goes and finds a new species, an organism who is still not discovered, not known to the world. So what that scientist is going to do with that specific organism? Will try to study the characters first, right? Now, coming to the next half of the chapter, first I'm going to tell you, you have learned what is biodiversity. You know how many number of species are known to the people. Now I'm going to tell you that if any new species, if any new organism is studied by the scientist, then what are the steps performed by that person in order to give that new organism a world level recognition. Correct? Now, suppose a scientist finds a new organism which is still not known. So first, that scientist is going to study the morphological, the visible characters of that organism. So first step, if you find any new organism, is to study the characters, is to study their features. For example, if it is a member of plant, then you have to see the arrangement of leaf, structure of leaf, the structure of flower, root, stem, etc. So all the features, study of all those features is known as characterization, right? Now, once the scientists have studied the characters, then comes identification. Try to relate that yet if any such organism has been discovered or not. So second is that after studying the features of that organism, try to identify that organism. So second step is identification. Now obviously, when you have studied the characters, when you have seen that organism, you have identified that organism. So third comes classification. Classification is actually keeping that organism into some convenient categories. So third step is classification. Classification means organizing or keeping the unknown organism into its convenient categories on the basis of some similar and dissimilar features. तो सबसे पहला step क्या है? What is the first step when you try to arrange a new organism, when you try to discover a new organism? So first step is to study their characters. Once you have studied the characters, once you have seen that what is the arrangement of leaf, flower, fruit, etc., the next is to identify. And then third is to classify them into convenient categories. After this, once you have known everything about the organism, once you have put that organism into proper classification, then comes naming. And last step is to provide a internationally accepted name. On global level, scientists are not supposed to use some local or vernacular names. They are supposed to provide names which are globally accepted. Rules have been framed, which I will teach you. Rules, bachcho, have been framed in order to provide specific names to the organisms, and these names will be used for that organism globally, just to avoid any kinds of confusion. Correct? So last step will be nomenclature. Nomenclature is the system of naming of an unknown organism in such a way so that globally that organism is known by one single name, to avoid any kind of confusion, right? So what I have told you so far, we have discussed about diversity, biodiversity. Biodiversity means different types of organisms present on the earth. Then so far it has been seen about 17 to 18 lakh species have been recorded. However, so many species, so many organisms are yet to be discovered. Now, if anyone tries to observe a new organism, try to discover a new organism, he or she has to follow these steps. These steps all together is known as taxonomy. And the scientist who deals with taxonomy are taxonomists, right? So those scientists who are responsible for discovering organism, for classifying organism, for giving them name, those scientists are known as taxonomists. Correct? What is taxonomy? Taxonomy is the branch of science which deals with the principles and procedures of classification. Once again, I am repeating, repeat along with me, learn this right now, very, very important. So, taxonomy is that branch of science which deals with the principles and procedures of classification. There are four prominent steps in taxonomy: characterization, identification, classification, and nomenclature. In characterization, you try to observe the unknown organism, right? Second, once you have observed the unknown organisms, once you have studied their characters, second step becomes identification. You're trying to recall, you're trying to identify on the basis of the features which you have studied, correct? Then comes classification, keeping that organism, keeping that unknown organism into some convenient categories on the basis of similar and dissimilar features. And last but not the least is providing a proper scientific name to that organism which should be globally accepted. No local, no vernacular names are accepted. Am I clear? And all these steps together is taxonomy. Right? So I hope what is taxonomy is clear to everybody. The term taxonomy was coined by A.P. Candolle. You should remember, NEET can ask this question. So the term taxonomy was coined by A.P. Candolle. However, the father of taxonomy is Carolus Linnaeus. This scientist is very important. He is one of the famous scientists of classical times, and he has done lot in the field of biology. So he is a very important person in my life, in your life. So please remember his name. And yes, so he is known as father of taxonomy. Correct? So who coined the term taxonomy? A.P. Candolle. Who is known as father of taxonomy? Carolus Linnaeus. What is taxonomy? It is the branch of science which deals with the principles and procedure of classification. The major steps of taxonomy are characterization, identification, classification, and nomenclature. Very good everybody. So last line, characterization, identification, classification, and nomenclature are the processes that are basis to taxonomy. Okay. So guys, we were doing about taxonomy. I explained you that what is taxonomy? It is a branch of science which deals with the principles and procedures of classification. There are 4 basic steps in taxonomy, that is characterization, identification, classification, and nomenclature. You know what is characterization, identification? Now, the important step which now I'm going to discuss you about taxonomy is nomenclature. You know that nomenclature is basically a naming system. Yes or no? It is a naming system. Now, why is this important? Because scientists want that all the organism should have a well-defined proper names which are globally accepted. Local and vernacular names, bacho, they were creating confusion. For example, if an organism is named something in one part of the world and the same organism is named something else in the other part of the world. So one organism was having so many names. That was not appropriate. That was creating confusion. So scientists thought that why not to make certain rules, make certain regulations so that all the names of the organisms, at least scientifically, should be globally accepted. That is why many scientists came and tried to propose rules for nomenclature, for naming. However, the most accepted system for nomenclature was proposed by Carolus Linnaeus. This scientist, beta, he has done lot of work in the field of bio, right? This name is going to come even in the next chapter when I will teach you biological classification. So you have to remember this name. He is a scientist of classical era. No, like Aristotle era ka scientist hai this fellow, Carolus Linnaeus. And this fellow is very, very important in biology. He has given some great contribution. He is also known as father of taxonomy. Remember, I told you? Yes. So this Carolus Linnaeus was the one who actually proposed the best rules and regulation for nomenclature. And his rules are known as binomial nomenclature. So basically, Carolus Linnaeus proposed sets of rule for nomenclature called as binomial nomenclature. Question comes, what is binomial nomenclature? In the name itself, bachcho, you will get the answer. How? Bi means two. Nomial means naming position. So, according to Carolus Linnaeus, if an organism should have a scientific name, then that name should have two naming positions. And those two naming positions are generic name followed by specific epithet. Like for example, if I write one scientific name, which is very common and everybody must be aware of this name. Oh yes, let me write it. Yeah. Okay. Sorry, there was no more space. Correct. So this Mangifera indica, which is the scientific name of mango. Very good. So can you see that this name, this mango scientific name is having how many naming position? Two. The first naming position is representing the generic name, whereas the second naming position is representing the specific epithet. Right? And this Mangifera indica is overall the species of mango. So according to Carolus Linnaeus, any scientific name should have two naming position. Can we write this first rule? Come on, let's do it. So first rule says that the scientific name should have two naming position. That is, first should be the generic name followed by specific epithet. Correct? Now, okay. Now we know that how you have to write the name. Second problem was which language to follow. So, Carolus Linnaeus beta had 4 language options which he could choose for nomenclature. They were Latin, Greek, Sanskrit and Arabic. Now, the problem with Arabic, Greek and Sanskrit was these 3 languages are spoken in some or the other part of the world. But Latin is a dead language. It is not spoken in any part of the world. So choosing Latin language for scientific names give one edge. What is that edge? That these scientific names are not going to collide with any of the name used in any part of the world. For example, nobody in the world will use mango as Mangifera indica. You go to Greek, you go to US, you go to Australia, anywhere you go. Nobody is going to say that give me 1 kg Mangifera indica, or nobody is going to say that give me 1 kg Solanum tuberosum. Nobody is going to say, right? So that is why Linnaeus chose Latin language, as Latin is the dead language. It is not spoken in any part of the world. Thus, these scientific names are not going to coincide with any of the names spoken in any part of the world, right? So, second rule says that the names, scientific names, should be either Latin in origin. If not, then they should be Latinized. Clear to everyone? Chalo, so let's write the second rule. Second rule says names should be of Latin origin or Latinized. Clear? Very good. Now you know which language to use. You know how to write. You know, in how many naming positions you have to write. Now you have to see how to write. whenever scientific names are written, मेरे बच्चों, you have to focus that first letter of generic name should be in capital, whereas first letter of specific epithet should be in small. This was the third rule framed by Linnaeus. What is that third rule? Third rule says that first letter of generic name should be in capital, whereas first letter of specific epithet should be in small. See, I have written like that now. Very good. Now, fourth rule says that if the scientific names are printed, then they should be printed in italics. Italics means slightly tilted, right? You must have seen in your notebooks and in your books that whenever scientific names are written, they're slightly written in tilted manner. That tilted manner is bacho italics. And if your handwriting, then both the names, both the naming position should be separately underlined. Can you see? I have separately underlined Mangifera and Indica. This is very, very important. My dear students, if you're not going to separately underline them, you are not going to get marks. You may write the correct name, but if suppose I don't underline this, my teacher is going to give me big 0. Right? So underlining is very important, and this becomes the next rule. Chalo. So write it. Okay. So next rule says if the names are printed, then printed honge to they will be in italics. However, if handwritten, then it should, both the names should be separately underlined. Clear to everyone? Yes or no? Yes. Very good. So these are certain rules which Carolus Linnaeus proposed so that correct naming system should be followed and all the names of organisms should be globally accepted and same. One more thing he mentioned, that suppose for example you want to mention the name of the author who discovered that organism. So the name of the author can also be mentioned after specific epithet, but that name should be written in abbreviated manner. Like for example, Mangifera indica. Mangifera indica bachcho, it was discovered by Linnaeus himself. So you can mention the name of the author, however in abbreviated form. So the abbreviation of Linnaeus is Lin. So how will you now say the name of mango? Mangifera indica Lin. Lin tells you that it was discovered by scientist Linnaeus. Correct? So we can do this as well. We can write this rule as well. So it says that the author citation means author name can be written after specific epithet in abbreviated manner. Like for example, see, Mangifera indica Lin. Is this clear to each and every student that what are the rules and how you have to follow? So this is very, very important. Now, bachcho, rules are framed. Linnaeus came, framed the rules. He died, he went away. So, who is going to check that whether still these rules are followed or not? Are the new scientists following the rules of nomenclature for naming or not? Who is going to take the responsibility? So, in order to ensure that new organisms are also named in the same manner, certain organizations are set up. The name of the organizations which you have to remember are mentioned on the board. Let's check one by one all those organizations responsible for correct nomenclature. Number one is ICBN. ICBN stands for International Code for Botanical Nomenclature. Bachcho, this organization is responsible for checking the correct names of the members of kingdom Plantae. Plant related nomenclature jitne bhi honge, are they correct or not? This is the duty of ICBN. Second is ICZN, International Code for Zoological Nomenclature. This organization is responsible for ensuring that all the names related to animals are correctly mentioned and they are following the rules of nomenclature. Third, ICNB. Slight difference from first one. First one is ICBN. Third one is ICNB. When it is ICNB, this organization is International Code for the Nomenclature of Bacteria. Mere bachcho, if the nomenclature of bacteria has to be done, then it is going to be ensured by ICNB. Correct? Fourth is ICNCP, International Code for the Nomenclature of Cultivated Plants. Cultivated plants are those which are not naturally present, rather they are created by own man. By, like, for example, there are two natural varieties, they are mixed in order to create a new hybrid variety, so that is going to become a cultivated plant, right? So the naming of those cultivated plant, just to ensure that whether it is done correct or not, is the duty of ICNCP. Right? So these are few names of the organization which you have to remember. My dear students, NEET, if you go and check last 10 to 15 year paper, questions on organization are usually asked. Sometimes on the base on full forms, and sometimes example based questions are asked from this organization section. So please learn these names, make sure you know them. They may come in the form of matching, true or false, etc. So I hope this is clear. Rules of nomenclature and organization is clear to each and everyone. Okay, very good. Now let's proceed further. Now, coming back to taxonomy. What is taxonomy? Taxonomy is the branch of science which deals with the principles and procedures of classification. There are four bases: characterization, identification, classification, and nomenclature. Right? Bachcho, when Linnaeus started his work on taxonomy, when Linnaeus started his classification or identification work, that was a very old time. At that time, there were no such advanced technologies. Microscopes were very primitive kind. No high power magnifying microscopes were there. So, initial classification system of Linnaeus was very simple. Characters which he initially used were simply morphological ones. Those characters which he could easily see, only those characters were considered by Linnaeus for classification. That type of taxonomy where only external morphological features are considered for classification is known as classical taxonomy. Clear? सो सबसे पहले आई आपकी द फर्स्ट वन टू एंटर इज क्लासिकल टैक्सोनॉमी. सी नाउ, सो फर्स्ट वन इज classical taxonomy. The name itself suggests something which is primitive, something which is not new. So when Linnaeus started his work, because that was an old era, at that time no some advanced technologies were there. So if classification system is merely based upon only external morphological features, then that is called as classical taxonomy. Okay, but with time advancement came, technologies got advanced, better microscopes were designed, people got an opportunity to study the parts which are present inside the body as well. So obviously taxonomy is also going to get advanced, taxonomy is also going to get modern. Now new scientists will come, they will try to modernize taxonomy, they will try to consider characters which are not only external but internal as well. So classical was replaced by modern taxonomy, also known as biosystematics. बच्चों, modern taxonomy means the taxonomy which is based, the classification system which is based not only on external features but also internal features like genetical, cytological, anatomical, embryological, chemical, etc. So modern taxonomy क्या है? It is the taxonomy which is based upon both external as well as internal features. Internal features like genetical, maybe embryological, maybe cytological, anatomical, etc. Whatever you can think, you can mention over here. Right? Modern taxonomy, also known as biosystematics. Can you see the difference? Classical se better is modern taxonomy. But there is one problem with humans. You know, human tendency is to never get satisfied. Scientists, initially they were not happy with classical taxonomy. They found flaws in classical taxonomy. Then came modern taxonomy. Here also scientists are not satisfied. Can you tell me why? So many features we have included now. Still, why scientists are not happy with this modern taxonomy? Because in modern taxonomy, one thing was missing. That is evolutionary relationship between the organism. And here comes systematics. The term systematics was used by Carolus Linnaeus in his book Systemae Natura. The systematic term is derived from a Latin term systema, which means systematic, proper arrangement. This type of taxonomy is using internal features, external features, as well as evolutionary relationship among the organism for classification. Clear? What is systematics? Systematics is a type of taxonomy which is based upon external features, internal features, as well as evolutionary relationships among the organism. Correct? Systematic term was used by Linnaeus in his book Systemae Natura. Clear? And next important point, the term systematics is derived from Latin word called systema, which means systematic arrangement. Okay? Yes or no? So one is classical taxonomy, modern taxonomy or biosystematics, and then comes your systematics. I hope this concept is also clear to each and every student. If yes, please do not forget to mention in the comment section. Okay, now proceeding further, and the next headline which you can see is taxonomic categories. I told you beta, classification, which is one of the major step in taxonomy, is actually grouping of organism into various groups and subgroups on the basis of similarity and dissimilarity of features. You know, taxonomy is simply classification of organism, grouping of organism, keeping organism into convenient categories. The organisms which are similar should be placed in one category. Organisms which are not similar, they should be separated. This is the only aim of taxonomy. Yes or no? What is the aim? Grouping, proper segregation of organisms on the basis of similarity and dissimilarity. And this is done for our own benefit. Correct? So therefore, in taxonomy, one step becomes very important, that is classification. You have done characterization, you have studied the features, you have identified it, you have provided the name. Classification is also important. Classification is grouping of organism on the basis of similarity and dissimilarity in various categories. Those convenient categories are known as taxonomic category. So, what is taxonomic categories? These are those convenient levels of classification where an organism is kept. Now, there is not only one category. So many categories are there now in sequence. Like for example, in a family, there is a son, father, grandfather, great-grandfather. So there's some sequence. There's some proper category like first generation, second generation, third, fourth, and so on. So that is called as hierarchy. Similarly, in classification, there is not one category. Classification is not a single step process. Rather, it is done in multiple categories. And those set of categories together in a sequence is called as taxonomic hierarchy. Let's read the statement now. Classification is not a single step process but involves hierarchy, means sequence of steps. Hierarchy of steps in which each step represents a rank or category. You can also use a term called rank or taxa for category. Correct? Since the category is a part of overall taxonomic arrangement called taxonomic category, and all the categories together forms taxonomic hierarchy. Am I clear or not? What is taxonomic categories? What is taxonomic hierarchy? Category can also be called as rank, right? Now, the lowest most category in classification is species. Overall, there are 7 obligate categories. There are 7 compulsory categories of classification. Apart from these 7, there are many more categories as well. However, we are not concerned with that extra unobligate intermediate categories. In our syllabus, we only need to do the 7 obligate categories. The 7 obligate categories from lower to above are species, genus, family, order, class, phylum or division. Now, phylum and division, mere bachcho, there are 2 different categories at same level. Phylum is when we are talking about animals, and division is when we are talking about plants. And the topmost category is kingdom. So how many obligate categories are there? And one more thing, these all together forms hierarchy. Individually they are category, all category in a sequence is taxonomic hierarchy. Right? Thumbs up? Very good. Now, you need to learn these taxonomic categories, their name in sequence. So there should be some mnemonics as well now that make your learning even easier. So I have one very famous mnemonics for you all so that you can remember these 7 categories. Shall I? Very good. Pay attention. So I'm going to start in descending order. Topmost category se shuru karenge and then we are going to go till the lowest most category. So let's start with kingdom. Okay, first let me tell you this mnemonics. See, keep dishes. Dishes can be alternated with pot. Clean. Keep dishes या pot clean. Otherwise, family gets sick. Tick. Where K stands for kingdom, D or P stands for division or phylum as per you are studying, C stands for class, O stands for order, F stands for family, G stands for genus, and S stands for species. So you can see that the lowest most category becomes species and the topmost category of classification is what? Is kingdom. These are 7 obligate categories, but so you have to remember all these 7 important categories. Now, the lowest most category species, topmost kingdom. As you go up in the series, similarity among organism kept in each category keeps on decreasing. That means organism belonging to species level, like you and me, we all are same species. What species? Homo sapiens. I am also a Homo sapien. You are also a Homo sapien. Correct? Why? Why are we kept in the same species? Because we share maximum similarity. Be it internal or external. You also have 2 hands. I also have 2 hands. You have 2 eyes, 1 nose, 1 mouth. Even arrangement is similar. Yes or no? So that is why, because we share maximum similarity, that is why we are kept in the same level of category, the lowest most category species. But as you go up in the series, similarity among the organism keeps on decreasing. Right? That means if I talk about kingdom, then dog, cat, snake, fishes, humans, everybody belong to same kingdom animal. But are we sharing any similarity? Is there any similarity between me and snake, between me and fishes, between me and dinosaur? No, but still we all belong to same category, that is kingdom. So at kingdom level, organisms which are kept together share least similarity. Clear? Shall I write it? See, now as you go up in the series, similarity among the organism decreases. You can also write vice versa. What will be vice versa? That is, as you go down from kingdom to species, what increases? Similarity increases. Vice versa काम हो जाएगा. तो इस तरफ लिख सकते हो that similarity increases, upward decreases, downward increases. Will you remember this thing? Very good. Clap for you. Right. So these are मेरे बच्चों 7 obligate categories. I hope this thing is clear. Now one by one I am going to tell you about all those categories. Let's start with species. Very important. Maximum discussion we are going to do for species only, and then we are going to proceed further. Now, how will you define species? First of all, you should know the term species was coined by John Ray. Who coined the term species? Yes, the term species was coined by John Ray. Now, this fellow, John Ray, coined the term species. You can define species as, now how will you define it? Species represent group of individuals who share maximum similarity, or group of those individuals whose basic similarities or who share even fundamental similarities. Fundamental means basic. छोटी से छोटी चीज आपस में सेम है. Such two organisms should be kept in the same species. So how will you define species? Let's see. Taxonomic studies consider a group of individual organisms with fundamental similarities as species. Taxonomically, if I have to define species taxonomically, then how am I going to define? Group of individuals, group of organisms having even fundamental properties similar. Clear? There is, मेरे बच्चों, one more definition of species that was proposed by Ernst Mayr. This fellow gave biological definition of species. This is taxonomical. Then Ernst Mayr proposed biological concept of species. According to biological concept of species, those two organisms or those group of organisms which are able to interbreed and produce a fertile offspring should belong to same species. For example, dog can reproduce and produce a fertile offspring. Cat and cat, humans and humans. So we are two different individuals, but we are able to interbreed and produce a third individual. So that is why we are supposed to be kept in the same species. Right? So what is biological concept of species according to Ernst Mayr? Group of individual capable of interbreeding and producing a fertile offspring. Right? That means the principle of biological concept of species is reproductive isolation. जैसे two individual who are able to interbreed, same species. Two individual not able to interbreed, different species. So this is reproductive isolation. Clear? So this biological concept of species is based upon the principle of the species concept is reproductive isolation. Batao, clear to everyone? What is biological concept of species? Yes or no? If yes, very good. So let me happy. This is myself, and I am happy if this biological concept of species is clear to each and every of you. Please do not forget to mention in the comment section. Right. So I hope biological concept of species is also clear. This is the lowest most category of classification. The term was given by John Ray. Taxonomically, the species is actually group of individuals who share fundamental similarities. Biological concept of species by Ernst Mayr, based upon reproductive isolation, says that two different individuals capable of interbreeding and producing a fertile offspring should also be kept in the same species. I hope the species concept is clear. Now let me give you some examples. Okay, so I am going to use example. Is this color also visible? Yes. Panthera leo. Now, Panthera leo is lion. It's a name of the species of lion. Another. Solanum nigerum. This is the species of Makoi. So this is whole species represented by two positions, generic name and specific epithet. So this is the examples of species. I hope this concept is clear to each and every one of you. Moving ahead, after genus, as you go high in the series, comes the next category called genus. How will you define genus? What is genus for you? Genus is simply aggregate of closely related species, or group of individuals, or group of related species rather, which are having more common character or less similar character than species. Q? Because you have come one step ahead of species now, and you know that as we go higher in the series, similarity decreases or common character increases. So how will you define genus? Genus is a group of related species which has more characters in common. You can also alternate with less similarity in comparison to species of other genera. Clear to everybody? Or you can also say that genera are aggregates of closely related species. For example, see, Panthera is the genus for the species like Leo, Pardus, Tigris. So one species is Panthera leo, which is lion, Panthera pardus, Panthera tigris. So there are three different species with the common genera Panthera. Clear? Moving ahead. Now, above genus, which is the next category is family. Simple way of defining family. Who is going to tell me? How will you define family? Group of related genera with less similar features. Yes or no? Just definition part is just going to remain the same. How will you define family, students? The next category is family. That represents group of related genera with less similar features as compared to genus. For example, Panthera only I'm going to consider. One genus is Panthera. Another genus is Felis. Beta, Felis is the genus of cat, Felis domestica. There are two different genera, but both belong to the same family, Felidae. Clear? Yes or no? Okay, very good. Moving ahead. After family, next is order. So next category above family is order. How will you define order? Order means group of related families but with lesser similarity. Clear? Very good. Shall I quote one example? Okay. So beta one family is Felidae, cat family. Another family is Canidae, dog family. All these two families, they are carnivorous. They feed on flesh. Therefore, they belong to the common order called Carnivora. Let's write this example. Felidae, Canidae. Two different orders, two different families, but belong to the same order, that is Carnivora. Why? Because, what is the reason? The reason is they feed on flesh. Clear? Moving ahead. Next is class. How will you define class? Group of related. जल्दी से बता दो भाई. बता दोगे? Yes, very good. Group of related order with less similarity. Right? Example. One order you can see, Carnivora. Another beta order is Primata. Primata is the order which is of us, humans, monkeys, orangutan, apes. We all belong to order Primata. So there are two different orders, Primata and Carnivora. But all these organisms, they have mammary glands. They can feed their young ones. Therefore, we all belong to the same class, Mammalia. Can you see? Mammalia. Can you see, as we are going high in the series, similarity among the organisms are decreasing? Humans and lions, humans and tigers, we are kept in the same class, Mammalia. How much similarity do we have? Very less similarity. That is why we are belonging to the same class, Mammalia. Okay, now moving ahead. Division or phylum. First of all, you should know division term we use when we are talking about the members of Plantae, and phylum term we use when we are talking about the members of animals. These two beta, they represent the same category, the same level of classification, but the names are different. Division for Plantae, phylum for Animalia. Only this is the difference. Correct? Okay, how will you define it? Group of related class but with lesser similarity. And then topmost comes kingdom. It's the topmost category of classification. Here, organisms having least similarity are kept together. Will you do this? Yes or no? Okay, very good. Moving ahead. I hope all the 7 obligate categories are clear to all my dear students. Sure? If yes, then do give a thumbs up. Now, moving ahead comes the very important section from the point of view of NEET. The chart, this empty chart which right now you see, you have to learn it. If you do this in this year, in upcoming NEET, +4 directly in your pocket. Question will come, +4 directly in your pocket. Please pay attention. Please be focused. Right? Now you can see here, my dear students, I have created a chart having all the 7 obligate categories written. Now I am going to show you with the help of certain examples that how different species, they ultimately merge to common kingdom, right? So I'm first writing the name of the species which I am going to use, and then I am going to show you that how they merge to the common kingdom. Here I am going to take the example of plantae. That is why I have mentioned division. Correct? So first let me write all the name of the species and then I will talk to you. Okay, so first I have Solanum tuberosum. Next species, Solanum nigerum. Third, Solanum melongena, brinjal. Next, Ipomia batata. What is this? This is sweet potato. Then Mangifera indica, mango. Then Triticum aestivum. This is wheat. So many other species which you have to learn. NEET also is going to ask questions related to these names only. So please learn it. Now you see there are 3 different species which I have written. All these 3 different species, they belong to the same genus, that is Solanum. Yes or no? Ipomia batata belongs to genus Ipomia. Mangifera indica belongs to genus Mangifera. And Triticum aestivum belongs to genus Triticum. Yes or no? Yes. Now, there is one different genus in Solanum itself, Dhatura or Petunia. Now, there are 3 different genera, Solanum, Dhatura and Petunia. But 3 different genera, they all belong to the same family, Solanaceae, on the basis of their similar vegetative and reproductive features. So on the basis of similar reproductive and vegetative features, 3 different genera, they belong to the same family, Solanaceae. Ipomia belongs to family Convolvulaceae. Mangifera belongs to family Anacardiaceae. But bachcho, you have to remember all these things. And Triticum belongs to family Poaceae. Clear? Now dear students, you see 2 different families, Solanaceae and Convolvulaceae. 2 different families, but they belong to the same order, Polymoniales, as they have same floral features. So on the basis of similar floral features, they belong to the same order, Polymoniales. Now, order of Anacardiaceae is Sapindales. And order of Poaceae is Poales. Correct? Now my dear lovely students, Polymoniales and Sapindales, they belong to the same class, that is dicotyledony, as their seeds produce 2 cotyledons. So they belong to the same class, dicot. Can you see that we are merging different species? We started from different species. Now can you see we have merged into the same class, dicot. Why? Because as you go up in the series, the similarity among organism decreases. Whereas Poales belong to class monocotyledony, as their seeds produce only 1 cotyledon. Ultimately, be it monocot or dicot, they all are flowering plants, so they belong to the common division, that is angiospermy. And angiospermy, gymnosperms, bryophytes, pteridophytes, they are different divisions, but they belong to the same kingdom, that is Plantae. Yes or no? So this is, can you see, we started from so many different species, ultimately we ended in the same kingdom, Plantae, right? So did you all like this pattern of learning, this chart method for learning different scientific names and their classification into various categories? Yes or no? If yes, then do give a thumbs up. Now proceed further. Bachcho, I have prepared this chart for plant. I request all of you to prepare a similar chart on animal kingdom as well. If you face any trouble, mention in the comment box. I will help you, I will guide you. Right? Chalo. Now, let's proceed further, and we are finally heading to the last segment of this chapter, that is taxonomical aids. Now, what are taxonomical aids? Taxonomical aids, my dear students, are those tools, are those devices which helps in proper understanding of taxonomy, which helps in proper classification, which helps in proper identification of an organism. So what are taxonomical aids? These are the tools or devices which helps in proper understanding of taxonomy. Clear? There are different taxonomies, there are different taxonomical aids which you have to study. Some are like constructed on land, and some aids are books. So the ones which are constructed on lands are herbarium, museums, botanical gardens, zoological parks. And the ones which are present in the form of books are like key, flora, manual, catalog, and monograph. Clear? So one by one, we are going to study all the taxonomical aids. First one which is we are going to start is herbarium. Now, what is herbarium? Herbarium is a storehouse. You must have visited any of the botanical gardens in your this much lifespan. Usually in some standardized botanical gardens, my dear students, you find herbarium inside it. I remember it was my college trip. So I was in BHU, and it was my college trip. I remember we went to Darjeeling, and in Darjeeling there's a very famous botanical garden, Lord Botanical Garden. It's a very famous, and it's very old, very interesting to visit. If you get an opportunity, do visit that. In that botanical garden, there was a big herbarium. And herbarium is basically, my dear students, it's a storehouse where you preserve the dried and pressed specimens of plant species. In fact, you yourself can prepare a herbarium at your own house. How? Very simple. Simply, you have to collect a plant specimen, go to the garden, collect a plant specimen, dry it for few days, paste it on a herbarium sheet. In every normal stationery shop, you're going to get that 16 half into 17 half centimeter square sheet. It's a standard size of a herbarium, and in that sheet you can paste it, and then you can keep it, you can preserve it for long. Some information you can write on that sheet, and then you can preserve that sheet for your further use if you really want to. In fact, I don't know what is the correct right now scenario. Usually in schools also, when you are in 11th, where you're not 12th, teachers in schools, they give the project. It's like a summer vacation project. They give you to prepare a herbarium. Yes or no? Many of you must have made it by your own. So what is herbarium? Coming back to the topic, herbarium, my dear student, is a storehouse of preserved, pressed and dried plant specimen. That plant specimen which you collect from the garden, that should be first dried, and then it should be placed on the herbarium sheet, whose standard size is 16.5 to 17.5 centimeter square. Clear? Remember beta, the specimens should be, they are preserved. Why? Because here dead plant specimens are preserved. They are not conserved, they are preserved, because those specimens are first dried. Drying means you are killing them. Right? Now, they are used for quick referral system. Quick referral system means quick information. If I just want to get a little bit information about any of the specimen plant, then I can check my herbarium, and there I can just get a quick information like species name, local name, little bit information. So it's like herbarium sheets are used as a quick referral system. Right? Steps, how you need to prepare a herbarium sheet. First, go to the garden, collect the specimen, bring it to your home. Second, dry it. Either keep it in a newspaper, book or under your bed. Keep it for 3 to 4 days. The specimen is going to get dried up. Third, treat it with chemical mercuric chloride. Why you need to treat this with this chemical? This chemical is a fungicide beta. Now your specimen, you want to keep it for long, for 1, 3, 10 years, right? So you don't want that any contamination should happen to your specimen. For that, to avoid any kind of contamination, your specimen should be first treated with such fungicide like mercuric chloride. After doing it, take the sheet, mount it. After mounting it, stitch it. Rather than sticking it, stitch the specimen, and then finally label. Label how? Like for example, this is my specimen, or this is my sheet, herbarium sheet. On the right hand side corner, you are going to get here you are going to place your specimen. You are going to paste your specimen over here, right? And then here you are going to get a space where you are going to provide some of the information related to your specimen, and that information also contain the name of the collector, the date of the collection, as well as place of the collection, from where you collected the specimen, on which date you collected the specimen, as well as your own name. The collector name has to be also mentioned over here, and then you can keep it for quick referral system. Clear? What is herbarium? Herbarium is a taxonomical aid where we preserve dried and pressed sheets of plant specimen. Simply learn this much. Done. Right? Very good. Done and dusted. Yes. Second taxonomical aid is botanical garden. Parallelly, I am also going to teach you zoological park. Here, beta, living specimens are conserved. Remember, preserve word we use for dead specimen, conserve word we use if we are keeping the living specimen. You visit botanical garden, you visit zoological park. There you are going to see living specimens. Zoo में क्या दिखता है? Living lion, not dead lion. Living lions, monkeys and all. So in zoological park as well as in botanical garden, we are conserving living animal and plant specimens respectively. In botanical garden, it is a conservation of living plant specimen, whereas zoological parks are the taxonomical aid where living animal specimens are conserved and protected. Clear? These two can be used for study purpose for researchers and scholars. Students, they visit to botanical gardens, to zoological parks for their study purpose, for research purpose. As well as these two are also ex situ method of conservation. Ex situ means away from the site. Like for example, there is a forest fire. Whole jungle got burnt up. Now the animals, the innocent animals which are living there, now after forest fire, the entire conditions in that area are now not meant for living. There was a forest fire, everything got burnt up. Now that space is not fit for animals to live. If they are going to be left over here, they will die ultimately. There is no food, there is no water. So in that case, those innocent animals will be brought from that place and will be kept in some place where they will get their own natural environmental conditions and they will be conserved there. They will be made to reproduce in that space only so that their number can be increased, so that they don't become extinct or endangered, right? So such conservation is called as ex situ conservation, when the natural habitat of plant or animal has become destroyed or is not fit for living. Then those plants and animals are brought from that place, kept in a new place, provided the same conditions, same environmental conditions are provided. There they are also made to reproduce, to increase their number. This is called as ex situ conservation. In botanical gardens also ex situ conservation is done. In zoological parks also ex situ conservation is done. Clear? Some examples of botanical gardens. One I mentioned, which I visited, Leod Botanical Garden. Apart from this, in Lucknow, it's NBRI, it's National Botanical Research of India, very famous botanical garden and a must visit. Very, very beautiful botanical garden, even better than Leod. And Indian Botanical Garden, which is present in Havara, and Royal Botanical Garden, which is one of the largest botanical garden of the world, which is found in Kew, London. Right? Coming to zoological parks, in every city, in every place you find zoos. Zoo is also like an amusement place for kids and everybody. Right? I hope all the three taxonomical aids are clear. We did herbarium, we did botanical garden, and we did zoological park. Moving ahead, museum. Now, museum is also a taxonomical aid where dead plant as well as animals are preserved, not conserved. Why? Because in museum you don't find living specimen, you find dead specimen. You will find the skin of an animal, you will find the skeletal of an animal, but you will not find the real lion or tiger or deer inside a museum. You may find the skin, you may find their bones, you may find their skeletal system. So dead specimens are conserved or are preserved in the museum. It is also one of the taxonomical aid because researchers, scholars, students, they visit to museum for study purpose, for research purpose. Museums are established by schools and government. Schools and governments, they establish museum for students, for the people to visit and learn something. Yes or no? Come on, read it. So it's a taxonomical aid where dead specimens of both plants and animals are conserved. Then museums are used for research purpose and established by schools and other governmental organization. You find museum also in every small cities and big cities. You all must have visited museum in your life. And if not, then make sure you do visit museum. Right? Okay. Now, how some lines I have written over here related to museum. In museum, big animals, they are stuffed and stitched and then they are placed. Like for example, if I want to preserve maybe an elephant, for example. So I cannot keep a dead elephant as it is in the museum because it is having flesh, it is having blood. With time it is going to get rotten and it is going to create the environment of museum very smelly. So to avoid that, such big animals, they are stuffed with some hay and all, and then they are stitched and then they are preserved. You can also preserve their skins, you can also preserve their skeletal system. Some reptiles like snakes and lizards, they are preserved in bottle jars. bottle jar containing formalin. This you also find in your schools. Now in laboratories, there are some big jars in formalin. Then insects are kept in that. Snakes and lizards are also preserved. So this is what is all about museum. I hope all the 4 taxonomical aids are clear to my dear lovely students. Moving ahead, next is now in taxonomical aid in the form of book. अभी जो हमने 4 देखे, herbarium, botanical garden, zoo and museum, they are 4 organizations created on land. But now the remaining 4 or 5 taxonomical aids are present in the form of books. The first one is key. Key beta, they are the taxonomical aids which are based upon similarity and dissimilarity of different species. So key are used to identify organisms on the basis of similarity and dissimilarity of characters. Right? Key are analytical in nature. Key में क्या होता है? There are each pair of contrasting character in key known as couplet, out of which one has to be selected and another has to be rejected. Right? And each statement of the couplet is known as lead. Let me give you or let me explain this key with the help of an example. See, for example, I am having 2 specimens and I want to identify them. Right? This is one specimen. This is another specimen. Now I just want to identify. So what I will, if I want to use key as my taxonomical aid in order to identify these organisms, suppose A and this is B. So how will I do? In key, beta, there are some sets of contrasting characters given. And out of those sets of contrasting character, one statement you have to select according to your specimen, other statement you have to reject. The one statement you select, then followed by another set of couplet you get. Then one lead you are going to select, another delete. The one you selected, again related to that you get another set. Like for example, suppose I have to identify my A specimen and I am using my key. Right? So initially I'll get a couplet, a statement of contrasting characters. For example, leaves present, leaves absent. So these 2 statements are contrasting now. So they together, that is known as couplet. Individually, each statement is known as lead. This is lead, this is lead. Tick. Now according to my specimen, which statement should I choose? A, 1 or 2? 1, yes or no? So this one I selected, this I rejected. If I choose the first statement, then followed by this, some other couplet would have been given. Now suppose the next couplet given is, second couplet given. Now shall I remove this? Wait. Leaves present. So this lead I chose. After this, second couplet which I got after choosing that leaves are present is opposite phyllotaxy or alternate phyllotaxy. So choose one. This is also lead, this is also lead. So see, contrasting character, couplet. According to my specimen, which one is correct? Opposite phyllotaxy. So this lead got cancelled, this I selected. So 2 leads I selected. First, that leaves are present. Second, opposite phyllotaxy. Now similarly, I am going to get the third couplet. So many couplets will come. You are going to choose one statement according to your specimen and another you are going to reject. So like this, all the similar features you will come to know, and ultimately you will land to your answer that to which species or which genus this specimen belong. Clear? These are analytical in nature. I hope what is key is clear to everybody. What do you mean by couplet? What do you mean by lead? And what is the nature of key. That is, they are analytical in nature. Right? Okay. So this is all about key which you have to remember. Moving ahead is the remaining 4 taxonomical aids: flora, manual, catalog, monograph. Very easy. I am going to throw one statements related to all the taxonomical aids. You have to remember them. That's it. Questions will be asked related to these taxonomical aids in the statements which I am going to give you. Beta, flora is a book. You all must have observed. I hope in your school libraries also flora must be kept. Flora is a book which contains a vivid description of the habitat and distribution of all the plant species found in a given area. It is like an index to all the plant species found in a given area. So flora is a book which gives vivid description of all plant species found in a given area, like their habitat and distribution. Moving ahead, manual. On similar grounds, manual provides complete listing of all the plant species found in your given area. So what is manual? Complete listing of the species with little bit information. On similar grounds, catalog. Catalog was also providing information on all the species found in a given area, and those species are arranged in their alphabetical manner. So catalog also provide information on all species found in a given area in an alphabetical manner. Right? Last comes the monograph. Monograph means it's a book which provides complete information on any one taxon. Right? So monograph is complete information of any taxon. I hope that all the taxonomical aids is clear to each and every one of you, as well as this ends the chapter. I hope all the things, all the minute details which I have told you is clear to all my dear lovely students. Okay, so I hope this whole chapter is clear to each and every one of you. Now we have completed the entire chapter. We started the chapter by distinguishing between living and non-living. Then we started with the topic diversity. Then you studied about taxonomy, rules of nomenclature, taxonomic categories, and finally taxonomical aids. I hope you all have understood this part. And if yes, then please let's do some questions just to ensure that your concepts are clear. First question on the screen, as you can see, is scientific names of animals are based on the principles and criteria agreed by. So animals के nomenclature में, for the nomenclature of animal, which organization is responsible? Your options are ICVN, IUCN, ICZN या ICBN. ICVN is the International Code for the Nomenclature of Viruses. IUCN is International Union for the Conservation of Nature and Natural Resources. ICZN, International Code for Zoological Nomenclature. ICBN, International Code for Botanical Nomenclature. Yes, absolutely correct. in order to name animals correctly, the organization responsible is ICZN. So the answer of this question becomes C. Hope you have understood. Very good, very good, very good. Moving ahead. Next question on your screen is, which of the following taxa has least number of similar characters? So when it comes to least similarity, you are going to find the topmost category of classification. Remember all the 7 categories of classification from kingdom till species. So as you go high in the series, similarity among the organism decreases. Thus, for the least similarity, the category is going to be kingdom. Okay, now here you are having 4 different options: order, family, division, and class. Let's write all the 7 obligate categories in order to solve this question. The 7 obligate categories are kingdom, phylum or division, class, order, family, genus, species. In your options, it is order, family, division, and class. As you go high in the series, similarity decreases. So, which is the topmost category? Division, according to the options given. Otherwise, kingdom is the topmost, then division. So, the answer of this question becomes C. The division level of category is going to have least number of characters among the options given. Hope you have understood this question as well. Absolutely great. Well done. Moving ahead. Next question. In taxonomy, the first step is, आपके options हैं classification, nomenclature, identification and characterization. तो बच्चों, the sequence of steps in taxonomy are characterization, identification, classification, then nomenclature. So the first step is what? The first step is characterization. Studying the features of an organism in order to identify it. So the first step is characterization. Thus the answer of this question becomes D. Have you all understood? Yes or no? Yes, very good. So with this, I would like to end my session. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for viewing this session. Hope you all have understood well. And please remember one thing. Work hard, and only work hard. Hard work is the key to success. If you remember this statement, surely you are going to succeed in your life. Hope you enjoyed it. Thank you. See you. Bye-bye. Take care.